All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. So today we'll be going over the application guidance for this year for the 30% program. And what I would like to do is start with some of the updates that we have made to the calculator and the process, just to make sure that everybody understands how that all works. And also talking about the updated guidance for the directors and some of the resources that we've created as well. I want to make sure that everybody knows what their expectations are for the audit and review, and what their documentation expectations are as well. So I'll be going through all of that. But first, I would like to start with the calculator. Now, this is the calculator for this year, and this is the one that we'll be accepting this year. Last year, we had a couple come in that were the old state ed calculators, and we had to send them back and ask that they be redone. This is what's currently on our website. So we please ask that you use this one. And for anybody who has applied before, you might see that it looks a little different. And if everybody could please stay muted, that would be very helpful. So the change this year is that we took the total annual sales and the other rows and we broke them out so that it's a lot clearer what to actually include within those categories. So nothing has changed with what can and can't be included. Nothing has changed with how the calculator works. All we did was break out these categories to show exactly what can be included in all of them. So that's really the biggest change to this, is that you'll see a couple extra lines, but nothing actually functions differently. We've also updated the calculator chart to reflect these changes. So as you go through the process, you can look at each line and see what to include, what programs to include, and what programs to exclude. This is available on our website, and it's also available in the Food Service Director Handbook. Now, I'd like to walk everybody through how to actually use some of the documentation that you'll be getting from your business office and how to translate that to where that goes within our application. So I'll start on the top part of the application. That's where things have been broken out a bit more. Now you can see this is, the first one here is sale of reimbursable meals. So the top part of the calculator is where we include total revenue. So for this, we're going to include lunch and breakfast, as you can see in the sample revenue report up top, that we have sale of reimbursable meals for lunch and breakfast, add those two together, and that's what goes in the reimbursable meals section. For a la carte sales, this one shows as other cafeteria sales. And the reason I know that this one is a la carte is this is an example from last year where we have to make sure that everything that is under that category is actually allowable. So when I see something that says other cafeteria sales, I'm going to have to follow up and ask for a more itemized breakdown of that, just to make sure that everything included in those categories can actually be included in the calculator. So we know this because we had to drill down further. And I know everybody's going to name their revenue and budget categories a little differently. So where it's not explicitly clear, I'll just ask for clarification. Miscellaneous revenue, it was the same idea. This was actually the catering sales. And this is one where I had to go back to the director and ask, can I just see a breakdown of what C2770 is, just to make sure that everything in there can be included. For reimbursement, so total annual state reimbursement. For this one, it's okay if you want to use the financial information from your business office. What we will pull is the payment query from State Ed's website. So if you want to make sure that what you're looking at exactly matches what we'll see, I would recommend going to State Ed's website and pulling that payment query, just in case they're a little bit off. Sometimes they are, but typically not. And the same thing for total federal reimbursement, that we only include federal lunch, breakfast, and the summer food service program in there. Now in this report, you see that we have surplus food. Commodity food is not going to be in the calculator at all. It does not show up as revenue. It also does not show up as total annual food cost. So this will be omitted from the calculator completely. And interfund transfer. Now this one is one where you can only include meal debt. So if you have meal debt, that's uncollected revenue. So any sort of transfer that happens from the general fund to the school lunch fund, specifically for meal debt, can be included. Any other sort of interfund transfer would not be able to be included within the calculator. Now, if we go down to the bottom part of the calculator, this is where we look at just the revenue from lunch. And this one's pretty straightforward, where we have sale of reimbursable meals from lunch. And then we also look at total school lunch reimbursement from the state and from the federal government. Again, the payment query is the most accurate way to do this because that is the documentation that we'll be pulling to verify. So if anybody is unfamiliar with the payment query, this can be found on StateEd's website, and you can see the box here where it says SFA payment query. You would just run the XLS, so that'll bring up a spreadsheet. And what we'll include in that documentation, this will be another part of it where you can decide what programs you want to put in that report and what programs you want to keep out. So in this case, we would run 4 different reports. You can run one if you want and just separate out the numbers yourself. However, if you want to run 4 reports so you don't have to bother like switching around numbers and adding things up, that's perfectly fine too. So the first one would be total annual federal reimbursement. What we include here is breakfast, lunch, milk, snack, and summer food service program. There will be a separate piece on the bottom that shows F or S. So in this case, we would just hit F for federal. As you can see, we leave out the fresh fruit and vegetable program, local food for local schools, and the grants. Those are not included in the payment query. And if you still have any leftover SCA funds, those would also have to be subtracted out. We can't do it here, so that would have to be manual once that report is actually run. Second one is total annual state reimbursement. So it's exactly the same. You include the same programs. Just in the bottom part, you would hit S for state instead of F for federal. So that would be for the reimbursement to include in the top part of the calculator. For the bottom part of the calculator, everything is the same. We just exclude breakfast now. So that would be for federal, and that would be for state. If you just joined us, if you could please mute yourself, that would be helpful. Thank you. Now, moving on to the application itself. This is where you include all of the items that you purchased and where they came from and how they have been verified. We did make an update to this as well. We added a producer and manufacturer column, or a distributor column, because last year what was happening is as this documentation starts to trickle in, we were having to bounce back and forth. And when we do that, and we see like, okay, well, this district had apples and they got them from multiple distributors. When we go look at that, we don't know which one to look at because the distributor was never listed. It would just say apples and then it would list a price. So it was a little bit extra work trying to go back through the documents to see which ones were already verified and which ones we still had to verify. This will be a way for us to more easily identify what document to go to start the verification process or continue it. So this will help speed up everybody's audit, which, you know, we want to get this done as soon as possible and get everybody approved so that you don't have to worry about it and that you can get that reimbursement. So the way to fill this out this year, the top part here where, you know, it shows correct. If you're purchasing, let's say, apples from 2 different sources, one is directly from a grower and one is from a distributor. You would have apples listed twice for the food item, and then you would just separate out where each of those came from. So the producer or manufacturer, the first one would be from the grower themselves. And if it's a direct delivery, that grower is also the distributor. If it's coming from a separate distributor, that's where you would have to put in the name of that distributor so we can match that up to the documentation. The bottom part is an incorrect one and one that would make it, again, a little more difficult for us to actually verify all this because if you purchased apples from multiple places and you just wrote various, we don't know what document to go to start to even look for your Apple numbers. So it can take a while to actually get through that. So please separate out the items. If you bought an item from multiple sources, please list that item multiple times so we can know exactly where it came from. Now for the audit and review this year, an audit happens for anybody who's a new applicant and every 3 years after qualifying. If you were an applicant last year or 2 years prior and your application was denied, then a new audit is also triggered. So audit happens every time until you are actually approved. During an audit, all of the information in the application is verified. So we'll go through all the calculator numbers. We'll verify every single item that it comes from New York State, and we'll verify the dollar amount and how it was, and where it came from. In a review year, this happens between the audit years. For reviews, we are going to look at all calculator numbers this year. There was some confusion about some calculator numbers last year, and we had to do some check-ins with people. So what we're going to do this year, because this is the base for qualification, is look at everybody's calculator numbers. However, for review, we don't look at every single item. We only look at the top $3 value items. Now, if we go through and we need some clarification on a few items, we will reach back out for that. So we might look at other items if we see that something needs to be clarified. The documentation can be broken down into 3 separate categories. And the verification for all of this has to happen from outside of the food service department. You can't vouch for your own numbers, and you can't vouch for someone else's actions. And what that means is when you get something from a distributor and they say, oh, well, I sourced this from these people, we need that letter from the distributor themselves. If it came from the food service director, we wouldn't be able to accept it. What the food service director can tell us is, this is where I purchased it from. And then we would then go to that person if they're not already verified and say, can you give us a sourcing letter to let us know where you purchased it from? Because they have to verify their own actions. So for the calculator numbers, the verification happens either from the business office, so the revenue report and the budget category report. So it'll happen from the business office, or it'll happen from the payment query to verify what you received in reimbursement. For any sort of documentation to verify that something came from New York State, we need this from the grower, the distributor, or the processor. And lastly, for the cost verification, that needs to come from the vendor. For New York State documentation, if an item is on the Airtable, on the New York Food Product Database, that has already been verified. Any other item, we would need to follow this flowchart. Now, this flowchart is also available in that Food Service Director Handbook, which I will link to at the end of this. So any item that's on the Airtable has been verified, and in the application, when you hit that drop-down menu of, how did you verify this, you would just put the Airtable. Similarly for grown and certified items. If an item is grown and certified, it automatically qualifies. Keeping in mind that grown and certified verifies items, not full operations. In very few instances, they verify a full operation. So make sure that you're looking at it item by item, because somebody might be verified or grown and certified for carrots, but maybe not for potatoes that they grow in a different field. So it does vary, and just to make sure that you're checking up on that. If there is a processed item that is not on the Airtable, we would need a product formulation statement for that. Now for unprocessed items, if you're getting something direct from a farmer, as long as the name and address of the farm is listed on that invoice, that's all we need for verification. Similarly, if you're getting it from a distributor, if the farm source is listed on the invoice from that distributor, that is sufficient verification. If all it says is NYS on it, that doesn't count as being verified as coming from New York State. Now, from a distributor as well, when we see an item came from, let's say we have blueberries, we need to make sure that we have a source list for those blueberries. It can come from multiple places. It can come from multiple farms, as long as we have a letter stating, here are the items that we got from New York State, and here is the sourcing for all of those items. To verify cost, as I said, purchases need to be confirmed by the vendors. And ideally, this would be done through velocity reports. Now we know not everybody has the capability to run velocity reports, especially some of the smaller growers. So in that case, invoices are perfectly fine. When you're asking for velocity reports, what we need to see is just total purchases for the year for the district. We don't need it broken out by month. We don't need it broken out by building. All I need to verify is the total amount that you spent. So that would be the easiest way for us to go through the application. As I said before, internal tracking is not acceptable to verify New York State purchases. So like internal profit and loss sheets, we can't accept. Now, within an invoice, I mentioned like NYS being on some of those items. That is perfectly fine, especially when we need to verify the cost. Now, this doesn't say that it comes from New York State. What that's doing is separating out the item so we know what numbers to add up. So if a distributor has blueberries that are coming from multiple places and on their invoices they label NYS, or on their velocity report they label NYS, we know that those are the ones that we have to check. If all they do is say blueberries and they don't separate it out, there's no way for us to actually confirm those purchases. So in that instance, we may have to actually remove that item from the application. Now, this year, what we're going to do is something a little bit different with the documentation. We've created a SharePoint site. So anybody who submits an application will receive access to a dedicated folder for their SFA on this SharePoint site. Now, what was happening last year is we were getting a lot of documents in, they were coming into our inbox. Some of them were coming to my inbox, some of them were coming to the 30% inbox, and some of them were coming to the farm to school inbox. So it was difficult to know that we actually captured everybody's information because they were in multiple places. This is meant to eliminate that confusion. So you'll be able to upload your documentation directly to this SharePoint site. And when you do that, everybody on our team will be able to see it and start to verify the information. Now, one other thing that we'll be adding this year is that we'll be doing open office hours beginning in June. So this will be a time set aside for anybody to hop on. We'll have a webinar just like this. For anybody to hop on who has application questions, if they want some assistance with like walking through the application, what they can include, what they can't include, we'll just be here and anybody can hop on and off as they please. I will be sending out a schedule and webinar links for this next week once we get all of this finalized, but please keep an eye out for that because we want to make sure, especially coming towards the end of the school year, that everybody has the chance to connect with us if they need to. Now, this slide deck will also be sent out to everybody. So this is the link for the 30% website, the Food Service Director Handbook, as I mentioned, which will show each of those lines in the calculator chart and go through a detail about what can be included, what can't be included, and also what documentation is acceptable to verify every single line. The New York Food Product Database, which is still called the Airtable sometimes, is also there. So please look through that to verify your items if you haven't already. And then the calculator charts that we used earlier can also be found on our website here. If you would like to get in touch with us, that is our phone number, and our email is 30%@agriculture.ny.gov. If you want to take a look at the website, that is also linked down below. All right, let me check the chat and see what sort of questions we have. For Joe asked about BOCES aid. That is included on the calculator. The example I had just they weren't BOCES, so there wasn't anything there to actually use as an example. But BOCES aid is included this year, yes. For Lauren asked if any changes are made to include breakfast next year. It looks like that was not in any of the budget language from the legislature or the governor's office this year. So it appears that the program is going to stay as is. Kate asks if we need all of the reports or invoices and back up with the application or only upon request. So when an application is submitted, anybody who is under audit, I will set up a meeting so that we can kind of go through the process together. Anybody who is doing a review, I'll send out an email stating, hey, here's the documentation that we need. Could you please upload this to the website? So it will be upon request. It just depends on if you're under audit, we would need everything. If you're under a review, we would only need 3 things. So I wouldn't want people who are under review having to feel like they have to upload every single thing when all they really need is 3 items. So we will be following up with everybody when they submit an application. Joe is asking about interfund transfers for meal debt. Sometimes BOCES aid is recorded as an interfund transfer. As long as we can separate that out, that's fine. It's just like a general fund transfer to the district. That won't be allowable. But if it is BOCES aid, and if we can trace that to be BOCES aid, that's perfectly fine. Similarly with the meal debt, we need to be able to trace it to the meal debt, and then once we do that, we can verify it.
Good afternoon, Catherine speaking.
Catherine, could you please mute?
Hello?
Lauren asks if where to check to see if you are in an audit year. I will, Lauren, I'll circle back with you about that. I believe you are in a review this year, but I want to double check before I say that for certain. Marianne asks if our invoices don't specifically state an item is New York, but it is from New York Geo Preference bid, and we have the documentation letters. Is it okay for the invoices to not? Oh yeah, yeah. So Marianne, it doesn't. So what I was saying there is that if the farm source is listed on the invoice, we don't need any further documentation. If it's not listed on the invoice, that's when we would go to the letters from the distributors that it seems like you have on hand. Joe asked, velocity reports and invoices must state New York State, but what if an item is a process thing and doesn't say New York State? Okay, so it doesn't need to state New York State. This is just a way to differentiate between items that overlap. So like Joe, in the instance of milk, you're only getting milk from New York State. It's not like you're getting milk that's not New York State where we would have to differentiate the two. If it were an item like lettuce and you got some lettuce from New York State and some lettuce that's not from New York State, we would just need a way to differentiate that on an invoice, whether it's a separate item code or whether it states NYS on the invoice, just some way for us to be able to tell what purchases were made from New York State farmers and which ones were from California, Arizona, wherever. Does anybody else have any questions? Feel free to unmute and ask your question now. You don't need to put it in chat at the moment, but um, are there any other questions about the process or what to expect? If the vendors, Lauren asked if the vendors are on the database, I don't need any further documents. If they're on the database, I don't need any further documents to verify that they're from New York State. But I would need documents to verify the cost and all that. So that The New York State piece of it is taken care of, but the cost obviously isn't, so we would need to see the velocity report still. And that is typically done by item on the database, not necessarily vendor. So make sure that the item that you're putting on the application qualifies, because if it's just the vendor, that item specifically may not have qualified for New York State. Oh, Alan, good question. Yes, I forgot to mention that. When is the application due? So the application period starts July 1st, and the deadline is August 15th. So as long as you get it in by August 15th, we'll go through the process and you could be eligible. Stephanie asked, when does the application come out and how long does it take to process? It's out right now. It is on our website. If you'd like to download the application and maybe fill in some of the admin piece of it with, you know, who is the point of contact and all that kind of stuff, and your LEA code, that'd be perfectly fine. Uh, the process, depending on if it's an application or a review or an audit, audits obviously take a little bit longer. Review should be relatively quick. It all depends on the nature of the documentation we receive and how much follow-up we would need to do to actually verify that. And I know for the calculator itself, it seems like a lot, but it's really just 2 reports. All we need is the revenue report and the expense report from your business office, and that should take care of verifying every single number in the calculator. Any other questions?